Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, featuring my dad, the best coder ever.
So heads up, this is going to be a very non-technical episode. I'm going to be talking about sobriety and some of the lessons I've learned 10 years sober, why I think that may be applicable to you, and if you're struggling with sobriety, perhaps I can share some insight into what's worked for me and took me from a very, very negative lifestyle, one that I don't even recognize, into software engineering and basically just being a much happier, better, more productive person. So without further ado, about 10 years ago, I woke up under a bridge. And that's not quite true because to wake up, you have to first have been asleep. It's more accurate to say I was smoking meth under a bridge, kind of like a troll, a big meth troll. I wasn't homeless either. I mean, believe it or not, I was actually working at the time. I had a professional job and I had a button shirt that I had to wear and slacks and everything, right? Crazy. It's pretty wild to even think that that's possible. I was basically a functioning drug addict / alcoholic. But this is not as crazy as you think. Maybe my story is like yours, but maybe instead of blowing out, clouds of meth under a bridge, you're drinking 1 or 3 or 5 too many beers on a Wednesday. Maybe you like to do nose beers on a Friday. Maybe you just play too many video games. We all have some addiction. I think we try to put these hierarchies on addiction and say, well, at least I'm not as bad as that guy. At least I'm not as bad as Brian, who's saying this podcast. My problem is not that bad. But if you've ever wondered to yourself, do I have a problem? Then yes, my friend, you probably do. You have a problem and you probably know it. How do you know if you have a problem? Well, if you ever had to ask yourself if you have a problem. So I went from this unrecognizable life under a bridge, hanging with some of the worst people, doing some of the worst things, to now being in a position where I basically lead a team of software engineers and have a very, nice suburban life. It's unrecognizable. If Brian right now met the Brian back then, they wouldn't recognize each other. They'd have nothing in common. They wouldn't even have anything to talk about. So I'm free of all these drugs and alcohol. Software engineer. I like to work out. I even made it onto my trainer's Instagram page as a before and after example. So how did I do this? I think there's some lessons when I think about it. I didn't go to AA. I didn't go to jail. I didn't have court-ordered treatment. I did have an intervention, though, just like you see on TV. So it was Easter Sunday, and my mom dropped by my house. And my girlfriend and our 2 kids, they were just sick of it. They said, we're going to leave if you can't get this together. And honestly, I was going to die at the rate I was going. Literally, quite literally, I was going to lose my life at the rate I was going. My mom read me a letter. She gave me an ultimatum, and then she cried. And then I cried. And then I got really pissed. I was also drunk, and I hadn't slept because, drugs. I said, okay, whatever. I'll try it. I just need you to shut up. I need you to stop crying. I'll say whatever you want to get off my back. So I said whatever. I said, yeah, I'll give it up. And maybe in a few days, this will blow over. I'll go right back to doing what I was doing. That was my mindset at the time. I said, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm going to go right back to it as soon as your back is turned. I somehow stumbled into commitment. I had no idea how I was going to get through the first week, but I knew I had to do that much at least. Since 18 years old, I had never gone more than 3 days at a time without drinking. Ever. Never more than 3 days since a teenager. I told my friends, hey, you know what? I'm not drinking anymore. I told everyone I knew, and then people kept asking, so how long? And they kind of just laughed about it, joked about it, just didn't take me seriously. That pissed me off, which is one of the reasons I decided to see how long can I go? Geez, no one thinks I can do this? Seriously? So I responded, I don't know. I always responded, I don't know. I didn't say, a year or 2 years or a week. I said, I don't know when, because I didn't honestly know. Telling everyone that I was done with drinking put me in a really tight spot. If I backslid too quickly, it would be really embarrassing. What if somebody saw me in the bar 1 week after I told them I had an intervention? What would they think of me now? I threw away all the alcohol in the house. I erased all the dealers' numbers out on my phone. And then I'm thinking, now what? First couple of days were rough for sure. The 24 hours in a sober day go by a lot slower. My sleep was completely trashed. I was either barely able to pass out or taking like a 12-hour nap. And I wanted sweets. I wanted a ton of sweets. So I'd walk to the local liquor store. Everybody already knew me. I'd pick up gummy bears, a chocolate bar, a soda, and I'd eat all this junk and crap. That was actually a really low point, but it was still better than what I had been doing. Weekends were the worst. The first weekend, I realized I needed something to do to fill in the time because I was at the bar first thing in the morning or in the afternoon or spending most of my time either in or around areas where liquor was available. So I decided to see a movie. That became my go-to activity. Movies take up a lot of time. You got to drive there, you got to get your ticket, sit down, watch the previews and all this kind of stuff, then watch like a 2 or 3 hour movie. And so I rented movies and I went out to movies that just looked barely watchable. Like anything that looked just barely decent, I was like, I'm going to watch this movie. It's still one of my favorite habits. I love doing it. And if you're trying to get sober or trying to replace a negative habit, that's a great thing to start with doing because it takes up so much time. So that way, if you're on a Friday night, you're thinking, geez, I would normally do this negative thing, replace it. Eventually, I began looking into other hobbies like computer programming, which ended up leading me into a new career. Exercising quickly followed. I started running a little under a mile. I'd been smoking also for years, over a decade, almost 2 decades of smoking. I've been smoking since I was 13 years old. I was in terrible shape. The candy bars that I had been eating over all this time and the alcohol and other things didn't make me look super hot, right? I didn't know exactly why I started running, but I just kept at it. I liked the feeling at the end of the run, and I liked the fact that I was able to think during the run. I never use music when I run or work out, even now. I like to let my mind wander. I always solve the problems of my life by doing this. And I kept thinking, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can really do this thing. So far, so good. And I don't want to pretend like this is happily ever after. I still get cravings. I still have a massive urge to backslide that comes out of nowhere. When I got promoted to engineering manager, I immediately wanted to do awful stuff. When I got promoted at the previous job, I immediately wanted to do awful stuff. So what do? I write about it. I share my story. I exercise like a madman. I watch movies still. I go to the theater a lot, and I still like to indulge in a bit of candy every once in a while, you know? So I'm not going to pretend like it just all goes away. The urge is very, very subdued at this point. It's not nearly as loud as it was in those first few years, but I'd be lying to you if I said it just all went away and things are completely fine now. I also tend to overwork. I have put my addictive personality into other aspects of my life. It's one of the reasons probably why I have a podcast, have a full-time job, have kids, have a side business, and generally just work all the time. I don't think that's honestly healthy. And I'll admit it. I don't think it's a lifestyle that I would encourage my kids to do or you either if you listen to this. This whole hustle culture thing, maybe it's made for addicts because I can tell you it works for me. I don't think it's a great strategy for life in general. So what do you need to do right now if you're trying to establish a new habit, whether it's not drinking or not doing drugs or just picking up coding? You need to tell everyone what you are going to do. This makes your success more likely. It'll also tell you a lot about what your friends really think of you. When you tell your friends, hey, you know what? I'm going to learn how to code. Hey, you know what? I'm going to write a book. Hey, you know what? I'm going to stop drinking. What do they say? They say, you know what? You got this. Or they say, yeah. Oh, really? Well, how long is that going to last? That'll tell you what people think about you and whether you have the right people around you in the first place. It's also going to incentivize you to actually keep your word. Because if you're anything like me, you're going to be a little bit embarrassed if they see you backslide too early on. So tell everyone what you're doing. Next, get rid of distraction and temptation. For me, that meant throwing away everything in the cabinet that didn't make sense to have there. So no alcohol. When I wanted to get in shape, I threw away all the candy. I still don't like to keep candy in the house or a whole lot of cakes and things like that. I'd rather throw it away because I'm like, you know what? I could save the cake or I could throw it away because what's my real goal here? Eating a cake or, getting in shape. Why tempt yourself? Humans are not good at avoiding temptation. It's even in the Bible. Remember Eve and Adam and the apple and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, it's proven. We're not good at avoiding temptation. Don't play a game of who has the stronger willpower. Make your habit easy to do. Next, fill in the time. If you need a way to avoid a bad habit or to encourage a better habit, make sure you're filling in the time. If you like to watch Netflix movies too much, you're like, I really got to stop doing that. Do something else during that time. Maybe you want to exercise more. So maybe instead of, filling in more time with movies, you need to take away that time. So maybe Take off some of the apps on your phone. Have them only available on your laptop or something like that. So that way you're forcing yourself to recognize when you have that trigger that makes you want to do something and do something else. Schedule your workout times. Put it on your calendar. Make it blocked out on your work calendar if you need to. So you say, you know what, that 30 minutes during lunch when I would normally eat or something like that, I'm going to go to the gym or I'm going to hit like 100 push-ups in the parking lot. Whatever. Just make it easy to fall into the habit. Make it easy. Don't make it hard. Make it part of your life. And do anything. If you want to quit alcohol or drugs, whatever, you need to do anything. And I can't explain how important this is. Exercise. Yes, you just must do it. There is science to back this up. I've also noticed that most of the people that I've met that are successful in remaining sober also exercise. If you are learning a new skill like coding, or trying to learn, marketing, sales, whatever, you're trying to change your life, I think that exercise is the paramount foundational skill to add into that mix. And you might think, well, I'm already doing this one thing. How can I do both? They will feed into each other. The same lessons you'll learn through exercising, patience, consistency, seeing progress over time, understanding that it's consistency and dedication that's going to lead you to this thing that you think is unattainable. Once you see those results physically, you're going to say, oh, if this is possible physically, I know this is possible in other aspects of my life. That's what it did for me. I don't know all the science behind this, but I do know that personally and also just throughout people I've seen that are successful, they exercise. It will help you out tremendously. I have an episode on that. One of my least popular episodes that I really wish was more popular because I think that it's actually full of really good stuff that took me a long time to learn about losing weight and getting in shape that I hope will help you out as well. Very last thing, stop worrying about the future. I like to get a little corny here and there, and this is going to get a bit corny. Just get through the day. Whether you're quitting drugs, whether you're learning to code, whether you are just trying to stop playing video games. Own the day and you'll be on a long-term path to success. Not doing something for a year sounds impossible. Doing something for a day is where you want to start. I honestly hope that's helpful, like I hope most of these episodes are. This is one of those weird subjects, but I know it affects a lot of us out there. And if you are having trouble, reach out to friends, family. And if you have no one to talk to, I'm always open. LinkedIn, you have my contact information in the show notes. I'm not a doctor, but I do understand the struggle that you're likely going through if you do find yourself caught in addiction. And I do have things that have worked for me that I can share with you, but everybody will ultimately have their own path. Talk to you later. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to Parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes. See you next week.